The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
All right, here we go with another episode of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. I hope you enjoyed that slightly overlong last episode of the Florida Beer Podcast as we were at Mezcal Lauderdale. Did not realize it was going to be as big as it was. So, yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed it. Anyways, let's head back to beer. A few episodes ago, we had a two-parter with Pareidolia Brewing in the fair Atlantic Coast, Florida town of Sebastian. If you know anything about the craft beer scene in Sebastian, it's literally a walk past a Dunkin' Donuts and a very small two-story strip mall to the other craft brewery in the city right now, Mash Monkeys. And Mash Monkeys has some absolutely fantastic beers. I wish I could give some to all of you because it's some amazing, amazing stuff. So after the interview at Pareidolia, we headed over to Mash Monkeys to sit down with Gerry. He is one of the two founders and the brewmaster at Mash Monkeys. He is also brewing on the day that we sat down and chatted with him. But we had a great conversation about Sebastian, about the name Mash Monkeys, where they were located, kind of some of the history, and then just making some absolutely phenomenal beers in a town not necessarily known for it, but this is one of the best breweries in Florida, bar none. And if they could have their cold brew coffee beer on tap year round, that would make me so much more happy. Anyways, this is Gerry, co-founder at Mash Monkeys Brewing in Sebastian, Florida. Enjoy. I think I'm going to start with the city first, because driving into Sebastian, it's that, I guess, stereotypical sleepy coastal Florida city, a lot of retirees, and yet we've got two breweries. It was maybe a minute for us to drive to here from the other one. Does that surprise you about Sebastian, that this is a place that can support not just one craft brewery, but two?
No. Knowing Sebastian as long as I have known it, and the difference in the demographic, it makes perfect sense. In fact, the city officials believe that in this immediate CRA area, it could support a third as long as they're around our size. Anything much larger than our neighbors, they would have to go out west because of the zoning. But they love it that it's also encouraged more walkability of the area. Of course, beer tourism is a thing.
Absolutely.
As well as many other parts of tourism that they focus on.
But it's interesting that the city has, and because obviously we spoke to Pete and how he basically had to educate them on what craft beer is, seeing it sort of come full circle in their realization that a number of other Florida towns have realized that not only are craft beers not just bars to get drunk at and start fights, but they're actually pillars of the community and generators of tourism income. So it's interesting to see them sort of come full circle and even try to push maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, I can see it from that perspective also. The full-time residents, they're used to what they're used to, and the big demographic for them is lager drinkers because they're very blue-collar workers. They get out of work around the same time every day. They're used to just going and grabbing an 18-pack of something cheap. Then there's times they want to go with their friends and have a good time too and expand their palates. So he's not wrong in having to educate some of the full-time locals, but we're also a heavy tourist town.
I was going to say, do you get a lot of tourists? Do you get a lot of snowbirds in the area? What does that sort of look like?
We do get a lot of snowbirds, and that's where most of the tourists come from, is they're coming down to visit grandma and grandpa, and they're hanging out for the week. They're taking a couple days to go up to Disney, but we're close to the water. They want to go enjoy that. They want to go hiking. They want to go explore our natural resources. We're not far from everything. I mean, it's an hour to West Palm and an hour to Orlando, depending if you drive like me or not. And then they've got so many more options, but also come back to a nice, quiet, relaxed, safe town.
That's absolutely amazing. That makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously we are here now as we recorded this just before your 5-year anniversary. So let's go back 5+ years.
Mm-hmm.
And as you were telling me earlier, you spent 20 odd years in the kitchen, in a real kitchen.
I did. Yeah. I cooked professionally for 20 years, 12 of which was here in Vero at one of the top country clubs. And after a while, I decided I want to go do something for myself, but I don't love to cook anymore. I like to cook at home, but I don't want to do it as a day-to-day profession. Cooking and making beer have a lot of similarities, so it came
I was going to say, this
naturally.
is cooking, I would assume.
It
slightly.
is. It all comes down to time and temperature control, modification of ingredients, knowing how to use them, layer them. It's just like if you were making a fond and you were making a traditional soup, you want to layer those ingredients, give it lots of different character, but also not overdo it where one thing's more overpowering than the other.
Gotcha. So you decided to get out of the food kitchen and come into the craft beer kitchen. In what ways were those different enough to where you weren't going to get that burnout, where you weren't just right back where you were? I want to get out of the kitchen and do something different with my life.
Because there isn't the pressure of the line and being under the ticket, under the time,
That makes
under
a
the
lot of
gun.
sense.
I come in, I do my job, hang out. I mean, it's really the best job ever. Wake up, make beer, talk about beer, drink beer, sell beer. Yeah.
I mean, as it is right now, you're currently in a brew day, just in the middle of things. So I agree with you in terms of the pressure is just not there.
It's not the same as in a kitchen.
In terms of the culinary fulfillment, do you still have that when it comes to brewing?
Absolutely.
In what way?
So I'll give you an example of one we do every year in June for Father's Day, because Father's Day is a big day in the brewing or in the beer industry.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to take dad to the brewery.
Yep.
So I do a Bloody Mary beer. It smells and tastes exactly like a Bloody Mary, but looks like a beer.
I think my wife would really enjoy that.
Mhm.
Maybe we need to get some of that for her.
The only thing that I don't do is I don't add any hot sauce to it, because I don't know how spicy you like it versus they like it versus they like it. So that becomes an interaction thing for them. We set out a hot sauce bar. They get to make it as spicy as they want. They get to stir it in and enjoy it. And that becomes like an interaction for them. They can put it into the can before we fill the crowler and they take it home.
Gotcha. In terms of your culinary background, because I've spoken to some brewers that come from that food service, culinary chef background. And there's a couple of those in Florida. And unfortunately, we just lost Ty Weaver over 3 daughters. He came, from inside the kitchen.
Yeah.
Are there certain things that other home brewers, other professional brewers kind of need to learn that you just came in and you were like, okay, this is just second nature to me. This is how I know.
As with anything, understand your ingredients. Certain ones say like melanoidin malts or higher melanoidin malts, like crystals and caras and things like that. Those are going to be residual sweetness. The 5 tastes are salty, sour, sweet,
Bitter
spicy, and umami.
Yeah.
So you can use all that in your brewing. You just have to think of your different malts as giving those different things. Same thing with like lactose. That's going to give, a creaminess to it, some sweetness to it, but don't overdo it. Don't use too many melanoidins. You still need to have a balance. There is a point of having a dryness. So using salt. I love using salt not just in goes, but also in stouts and porters because it accentuates those deep chocolates and coffees and roasts.
Do you add to the point where you can taste, there was salt added to this?
No.
I mean, I had a goes a couple days ago and it was like, I could tell this was salted. I know that's the style, but I can tell.
I don't do it like that because normally my stouts, they would have a much softer water profile than my goes, which would have a bit more of a harder water profile. So it's clean and crisp on the tongue. And that lets you experience the salt because the stouts are softer. They're usually heavier bodied, thicker, whatever, how you want to put it. They carry the salt better so you don't pick up on it as much. But I'll use the same amount of salt. You also have more residual sweetness. Sugar and salt work together. If you don't have any residual sweetness in your goes because you've got sour, you're going to pick up on the salt more. Salt and sour, vinegar per se, season a dish the same way. You don't have to use as much salt when you're using vinegars in it because it's going to interact with the tongue in the same kind of way.
Gotcha. Obviously, one of the big things that most of the state likes to do are kind of the big, heavy adjunct stouts, putting in as many ice cream toppings or whatnot as you can. Is that something that you generally like to do just from a culinary standpoint, just for something that you like to do? Because obviously you have adjuncts. We both kind of took a look at the Not Your Girlfriend's iced coffee. Is that something that you're able to just sort of play with and you think you have a little bit of leg up on others?
I wouldn't say that I have a leg up on it because I don't take it to the extreme or as far as some of the others do in the industry or as well around the country. They're there to be present and enjoyable, but not to the point where like you forget that you're drinking a beer and that it overpowers everything. And we don't do it with a lot of things. It's just once in a while, whenever we feel like it. Okay, sure, I'm going to make this one taste like this. But I prefer personally using as much things that are local or in season as possible to integrate in, say, the fruits, the herbs, the spices.
I was going to say, obviously, in Indian River County, the first thing that you would go to is citrus.
We do a lot with Shat Groves in Vero using their citrus, and then we bring some and they do a beer and food pairing on Saturday evenings during this time of year. There's another one. There's a guy out in Fellsmere. He grows dragon fruit for me.
Really?
Yeah, and we do a dragon fruit sour every year. It's a very nice beer. And we also work with the local pineapple guy right down the street. He's like 5 miles away. And I will use his pineapples, whatever the ones he can't sell that aren't perfect and pretty, because I'm just going to juice them.
Mash them up, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. And then also the herbs and the spices, too. That same guy, he also grows sugar cane.
Really?
And it's fun to, like, mash that in. But, like, you got to crack it first, of course, and, like, try and extract some syrups. His Caribbean red sorrel, or some people call it cranberry hibiscus.
Sorrel, yeah, that's a name. I used to have sorrel tea. It's a very distinct flavor, but it is very close to hibiscus. I can tell that, but I had no idea that anybody in the state had been using that for this. I'm actually excited.
He grows tons of it, and I can get as much as I want when it's in season, of course.
Awesome. So when you have access to all of this produce, all of this agriculture, which comes first? Do you get the produce and then build a recipe around that, or do you kind of start with a recipe and find the produce that's going to work best for that?
I would say start with the recipe and then find the produce that's going to work best with it. So there may be times where pineapple's in season. Okay, great. But coconuts aren't. So I have to save some of that pineapple for when coconuts are to then make a pina colada sour.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever looked at, I guess, brewing the same beer several times throughout the year, just treating it differently? It's like, here's a golden ale. In January, it's going to be a pineapple golden ale. In March, it's going to be a navel orange golden ale, and sorrel golden ale, and so on. Or is there really nothing in that for you?
Not really. I mean, sometimes it's fun to, just say, hey, you know what? This time we're going to do this with it. But it's not like one that we keep around all the time. And then, okay, now this time we're going to do all that. It's just once in a while at our whim, because we don't have any distribution. We're a very small 2-barrel brew house. We can do whatever we want whenever we want. We're not locked in with contracts of having to brew things all the time. We're not locked in with contracts of our ingredients on such a heavy level that, like, well, we got to find a way to use the extra of this now. Markets change, trends change, and you got to be able to change with them. But then again, I don't feel like I need to be at the forefront of them either. We just do what we would do.
Yeah. So let's talk about the location, because we're going to follow up on some of those items because I think it's fantastic. But we're going to talk about Sebastian. Now, obviously, you are leaving the kitchen after 20 years, and you have a partner in this business as well, correct?
Yeah.
Is he coming from the kitchen as well?
No, my business partner, Pat Kirchner, he's a Sebastian native, born and raised here. He worked on Yamaha engines in a marina for 15 years.
Gotcha. So how did he get into craft beer? Because your journey there was a much shorter jump than working on engines to beer.
Yeah, he traveled a lot to Virginia to see in-laws and the Roanoke area, and was able to get exposed to places like Devil's Backbone and whatnot, where he was like, I love this style of beer. This is great. And then he started making some in his garage, and we actually met over at Paradolia, hanging out after work one day. I was talking about making beer with another guy, and he goes, I make beer. I said, cool, you should come join the homebrew club and we'll hang out. So that's how we met, was with when they were called Boil Over Boys. Now they're called Boil Over Brewers.
Okay.
More women joined the group. It's more
cool.
inclusive. And then, so we did that, and both of us hated our jobs and decided, let's just go ahead and do it.
That's awesome. And of course, the name Mash Monkeys, as you were telling us earlier, is kind of a combination of your two previous positions.
Yes, his was as a marine mechanic, and everybody knows the term, a grease monkey. Well, in a kitchen, not everybody knows this, but a term is called a stove monkey. And that there's actually an apparel line, like for cooks, where they've got these like anime type characters and whatnot, and they make fun of hip hop and on their shirts and what. It's pretty funny. Anyway, so I was a stove monkey. He was a grease monkey. But mashing is part of the brewing process. Most people push a button and a rake stirs it for them. We're much smaller. We actually still use the paddle. So
gotcha.
That's where the Mash Monkey part
That's
comes.
kind of awesome. And so obviously he's a Sebastian native. You're over in Bureau. Was there any trepidation about going ahead and doing it here in Sebastian? Did you want to try to go a little bit farther north or a little bit farther south? Because, obviously go a couple hours north, Jacksonville's got an amazing scene. You go a couple of hours south, Palm Beach had some, but there's enough that's kind of going down there as well. But you decided to stay right here in Sebastian.
There was no trepidation whatsoever. I'm originally from Maine, a very small town. Grew up out in the woods running wild. But I was raised, if you're going to live in a community, be a part of that community, be supportive of that community. Otherwise, go find where you want to be. Don't just sit there and reap the benefits of it and act like you're going to change everything. Become a member of it.
Gotcha.
Now, I worked in Vero, but I lived in Sebastian. I love Sebastian. I think it's a great place. This is where I met my now wife and my stepdaughter. So it just made sense to do it here and stay here.
That's awesome. And of course, you found the location, which I'm going to assume, I am correct in assuming that this was a restaurant previously.
It was two things. It was a takeout only pizza place and a very, very small like workout room. So that's why there's
two doors,
different sets of doors, and you can see where there was a wall.
Yep.
And we rented both spaces and did a complete tear down. The only wall that didn't come down is the one from behind the brewing equipment.
Uh-huh.
And the hood was already there. The walk-in was already there, but everything else had to be rebuilt. All the bathrooms, and the office, and the fermentation room, the bar area.
Interesting. Yeah, I could definitely tell that this was something else. I didn't realize the wall and the partition and everything, but I guess how difficult was it to envision these two locations as one big location? And was there any concern being so close, obviously, to Paradolia?
I didn't see any concern whatsoever. The day that Pat and I decided, this is the place it's going to be, and we signed the lease, we drove right over there, looked Pete right in the eye and said, we're going to open a brewery up the street. So he didn't hear it from somebody else. He didn't hear it like some rumor. Who's it going to be? No. If you're going to do it right. But we don't see it as competition. We see it as community. If he's doing well, we're doing well. If we're doing well, he's doing well. We encourage people to go back and forth.
And do people do that?
They do.
Yeah, I would assume that because it's so close that they would even park a car like here or there, probably over here because you've got a small strip mall next to it that seems to be closed, relatively speaking, about the times that you're open. So they'll just park here and they kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, he offers food. He opens at lunch. We don't offer any food, so we open later in the afternoon. It also works well with our neighbors who are just, open from 9 to 5, if you will. But we do encourage people to go back and forth. Park once, walk around, then, drive around, because it's not the easiest over here on US 1 to just make a U-turn. Now, that being said, a lot of people take us up on it. Some people have their favorites, and that's up to them. It's human nature. People are going to, one or the other. Okay, fine. We don't influence it one way or the other.
In terms of Sebastian, have you been able to sort of pull your clientele towards the styles of beers that you're really interested in brewing, or are there still a few styles that are going to be off limits to the local crowd?
I wouldn't say that they're necessarily off limits. We may dabble in it, and, some people may like it, some people may not. People like what they like, but then there's things that they don't know that they like if they've never had it. And we have an amazing bar manager, taproom manager, that she gets to know all the customers, the regulars, and they talk about what beers and what they like, what they had somewhere else, things like that. Oh, well, you like that, you'll probably like this. Or, oh, this is a new one. You should here's a sample, try it, that kind of thing. As well as, like say someone may be like, oh, you know what? I only like IPAs. Oh, but you should try this Pilsner. And then let's do a slow pour. So it, gives it, a softer, creamier mouthfeel. Hey, you know what? I really like that. And then they want to drink the Pilsner all the time.
It's kind of amazing. Are there any styles that you're a little amazed exploded and that you have to keep coming back to more and more?
No, there's more that I'm upset about that are great that people really just don't gravitate towards. Like the steam beer, brown ales, Belgian styles. I was going to say brown ales here, I would figure would still be somewhat popular. They do somewhat. Like we make some once in a while, just randomly, but for the most part, people see brown ale and they just skip right over it. Same thing with like a Belgian double or something. They just skip right over. Like, no, not for me. That's a shame. It is. Even before they try it. Yeah. That's interesting. But then again, you also, like you said, you have a small enough system and you're not distributing, so you can basically do whatever you want. Are there times where you have to just keep coming back to a certain few beers because people will not let you let it go? Yes and no. So this variegated is on in place of Aquapazza or capsized. And sometimes we may have 2 or 3 IPAs on, depending on what we decide to do. We still like to make new IPAs because there's a lot of cool new hops out there that we have access to be able to just buy a small amount, try it out, not buy a full contract of, and just have fun with it. Now, of course, we're known for our lager program, and we try to keep lagers around in some way all the time, whether it be the Schwarzbier or the Vienna lager or the Pilsner or the red lager. Usually around this time, I'm starting to make beers to get ready for Oktoberfest. The most that we ever did was 21 different house-made German-style beers to be released for Oktoberfest. That sounds amazing. And that's by making a different batch, take a keg, set it aside, put the rest on tap. That was a very big undertaking. I don't think we're going to do that again. It takes up a lot of cooler space and cooperage. But it does sound absolutely fantastic. But you'll have enough barrels, and I saw, obviously you're coming up on your 5th year anniversary, and you do have a special barrel aged beer that you have coming along for that. So that Aquapazza was a big hit for us, to the point where, we like to have it around, but we like to make other things too. So we decided to do an imperial version of it called Extra Pazza. Extra crazy. And that'll be released on anniversary. Sometimes we do a barrel-aged stout for our anniversary. This year we did a barley wine that was aged in a ex-bourbon barrel, ex-maple syrup barrel. That sounds amazing and heavy all at the same time. It's not going to be that heavy because, a nice barley wine should not finish too sweet.
Gotcha.
Shouldn't have too heavy of a mouthfeel. And by barrel aging it like that, you get the notes of the maple syrup and the bourbon. So it's like eating pancakes with syrup and sipping bourbon neat for breakfast, you know? And just have some fun with it. We called it Old Wannabe Hooligan.
Is this a big barrel aging town? Is this a big barley wine town?
People that enjoy them, but they're not drinking them all the time. They may have one as like, you know, the end of their time here, their nightcap per se.
Yeah.
And then there's, of course, the ones that like to take them home because maybe they're going home, they're lighting a fire, they're going to sit there and have a cigar and enjoy another glass.
Yeah.
They do sell well, they do move well. But it's not like people are sitting down and drink 4 or 5 of them, not at 10.5% and stuff like that. No.
Gotcha. And I was also going to say, you know, especially knowing those people in the community, you would probably be connected with the community for a good chunk. Obviously, you know, there's certain signage like the Pelican Island Foundation and, you know, obviously what you're wearing, things of that nature. Is that just part and parcel for being a good business owner, or is there sort of an extra added benefit for a brewery to be connected into the community like that?
I can't speak for other breweries, but it was the lifestyle that I wanted. I didn't want to be in the kitchen 6 days a week, 70 hours a week. I wanted to be able to be out and be active and be a part of the community. By opening a brewery with my partner, Pat, we found ourselves to be able to have some time to be able to do those things. And it was the lifestyle I wanted. By doing it, it isn't so that I can see what comes back to me or to the brewery, but it's just a natural byproduct that good things will come back to you when you do good things. That's all.
That's kind of amazing. And I guess, are you happy? Was this the right location in terms of building and the city and the people for you and your business partner to have settled and created Mash Monkeys?
I think so, yes, because our overall intention from the very beginning was to be a neighborhood pub, a place for people to go to hang out with old friends and make new ones. You never know who you're sitting next to. There was another brewer from another state sitting there at the bar talking to a regular yesterday, and just 2 seats down is the mayor. You know, you never know who's going to be in here, and if you just strike up a conversation, sometimes you may find a solution to an issue or a problem, or get an idea about something that sends you off and driven because of it. It's the kind of place we want to be. There's no TVs for that very reason. And yeah, of course, people still get on their phones, but that's okay. Fine, whatever. Who's not on their phone all the time, right? There's not much room to expand here. We really kind of only have a little bit of growth that we could do at this location. If we wanted to do more, we'd have to go to a second location or open a secondary one, a production one. We could contract out, but until laws change in Florida, I don't really feel the need to run after that. There's enough competition as there is for tap space and shelf space. Then they want to fight it out, let them fight it out.
But it seems like everybody's coming in here just fine, and that's kind of exactly what you're looking for.
As long as we keep the lights on and the employees paid and we're all having a good time, to me, that sounds like we're winning. You know, like, don't need to have a bunch of competition medals hanging, because every returning customer is another medal.
That's an awesome place.
Can't hang them on my wall.
Not without the cops getting involved. Thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. It was nice to meet you.
So there you go. It is a small system, which means that there's going to be a lot of turnover because they get pretty crowded on a regular basis. Definitely worth it to just head on out there and check out what they have, because trust me, you will not be disappointed. They really are that good. And if you're looking for some interesting reviews on their beers, just keep an eye on Florida Beer Blog, because we're going to have some stuff come up pretty soon. Next week, we are still in the Treasure Coast. We're going to switch off of the beer once again, just briefly. It's got some other things that we wanted to talk about, but you'll be able to hear that coming up on the Florida Beer Podcast. And the best way for you to find out what's going on is to follow us on social media. We are at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram, Twitter, whatever it's going to be called here in the next couple of minutes. In fact, we're even on Threads right now. Yay! At Florida Beer Blog. I'm not totally sure if I know how to use Threads very effectively or not. I should probably learn that. If you're on the Facebook, we are FL Beer Blog there. Internet is floridabeerblog.com and floridabeerpodcast.com. And when you go to floridabeerpodcast.com, you will see very quickly that we are part of the Florida Podcast Network, which is a group of awesome Florida-based, Florida-minded podcasts from around Florida. And you can come find out all the information there or at FPN Insiders, which is our closed Facebook group. For more information, or if you want to sponsor our humble show, you're more than welcome to email us at floridabeerblog@gmail.com. If you are listening to us on a podcasting app, please make sure to subscribe. And if you can, give us a nice 5-star rating. It really does help us get the word out. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer is Steve Pekala. Executive producer for the Florida Podcast Network and Grand Hype Hoobah is Jemmy Legagneur. This is David Butler, your host and author. We will be back next week for some more fun in the Sunshine State. In the meantime, thank you so much for listening and drink Florida Craft.